How can we make the world better? By making ourselves better. The Dr. Joe Show explores how you can make positive personal change by using his groundbreaking and highly effective I Am approach to understand who we are and why we do what we do. Your small changes can have big effects.
Join us now for the Dr. Joe Show with Mark Stiles of Stiles Law and your host, Dr. Joe Schrand.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dr. Joe Show.
Wow. Your breath control is just remarkable. It's better and better every time.
Oh, I thank you, Dr. Joe.
Have you been doing some athletic workouts or something?
Yeah. Well, I missed the karaoke. You know how much I miss my karaoke.
I know, so do I. For everybody there, Monica, the Ming, and Jimmy, and everybody, we miss you guys a lot. This used to be our tradition. After the show, we would go over to our local Chinese restaurant and sing one karaoke song.
Mm-hmm.
But it had to be a new one. We couldn't sing the same song twice. So
right. It was a challenge, but we were up for it.
It was great. Miss it, yeah. Tom, how are you doing? How's your week been?
Oh, it's been good, Dr. Joe. I just dipped my feet back into the world of Bitcoin.
Really?
Every now and then I'll get some sort of hot tip that everyone has already heard. And that
we could have a long conversation about that, but I don't think that's the subject of the show tonight.
And I got crypto FOMO. Like, I know you're not supposed to invest in things you don't fully understand, but I have a Coinbase account and I bought myself some Bitcoin.
I cannot wait to hear more about it, perhaps even from our guest tonight. Tom, will you introduce our guest tonight?
Oh, handy we have her here. She is a financial planner with a passion for the intersection of taxes and investing. She likes to work with motivated savers, beneficiaries of estates, business owners, divorcees, and pre-retirees. Ladies and gentlemen, Alyssa McNamara Reed.
Hey.
Wow, applause. Wow.
Yeah, welcome.
I've got to work on the sound effects on my show. This is a whole new level here.
And you have an incredible show on WAT. Tell us about that right away. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for having me. Good evening. So I'm one of the hosts of McNamara on Money, also here on WATD. We've been on Saturday mornings. I think it's about 30 years now, 27, 30 years. My father started it all those years ago. I've been on, 15, 18 years now. So we're now Saturday mornings, 8:30 to 10:30, and also Sunday mornings, 7:30 to 9:30.
It's fantastic. And for the listeners out there new to the Dr. Joe Show, but also new to WATD, listen to it. It is great. I am an avid fan.
Thank you.
I think I even called in once and asked something about my mother's finances. So,
well, thank you. And actually, I think it's 8 to 10. I think I just misspoke. Our show is 8 to 10, not 8:30 to 10:30. But thank you for having me. And I actually look forward to having Mark on our show. I think we picked a date in early April.
Yes, we did.
After ski season. So I look forward to that as well. But thanks for having me.
Sure. So, Mark, what's that show going to be about?
I think we're talking about real estate investing, right? As a diversification for the portfolio.
We were tossing around some ideas, talking about real estate closings for 2 hours might be a little boring for 2 hours, but anything related to real estate and maybe some legal stuff. And I thought we could get into how like in-laws are very common right now, and how do you own the properties and things to think about. I thought we could chat about some of that stuff from a legal and a financial perspective.
Yeah, and how closings are being conducted these days. It's not. It's innovative, right, Dr. Joe?
Very true.
Adaptation is innovation. That's how we are approaching COVID. Listen, I just so appreciate the enthusiasm that I hear in your voice as you're talking about. So your dad did the show first. How did you get involved in finance?
I sort of just fell into it. Like I said off air, my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. So I've always loved math and problem solving. When I got out of school, I hadn't found my passion in my 4 years at Villanova. I loved the school and my experience there, but hadn't found my passion from a career perspective. Had always, worked with my father summers and all that, of course, growing up, and helped him out in the business. And then, just literally just fell into it and started to really enjoy it. And learn a lot, and just found that it was, that it was just such a good fit for me. I'm able to achieve this great work-life balance being self-employed, and which is great when you have kids, as I'm sure you know. And I can still do my math and my problem solving and the financial planning that I do for clients and investments. And so, so that's my story. It's the family business. I work with my husband now, and my brother and my father. So we've built a great family business, and it's just a joy to go to work every day. And I feel so corny saying that, but it's true. And actually, I don't go to work every day right now. Of course, it's balancing, being in the office and being at home too. But that's actually been nice to be home more. So
yeah, how has that balance been? I mean,
So, in many regards, it's been wonderful. My girls are getting to the ages where, I'm understanding that their childhood is fleeting, and, they're getting older, and that's, very sad, of course, to think about that. But it's been so nice to spend the extra time with them. Mm-hmm. But of course, balancing work and my clients and running the business, and, of course, that has been incredibly challenging. But, I've had help. My husband and I can both sort of be flexible with our schedules. So, we try to alternate. And before, my parents, they winter in Florida, but they were, very helpful before they went down for the winter. And so we have a lot of help. So it has many stresses, of course, as this situation is stressful for many people for many different reasons. But on the other hand, it's been so great to have the girls home every day. And I think I'm really going to be incredibly sad when they go off to school, which is going to be in a couple weeks. They're supposed to go back. Really? 4 days. So yeah. And so it's been good.
Yeah. It has been a blessing, isn't it? These hidden blessings of this whole pandemic, getting a little closer to our family. Sounds like you and I have a lot in common in terms of definition of success. I don't mean to impose, but for me, I love going to work and I love going home. For me, that's success. And right now I get to do both at the same time. So I am doing all telehealth and telepsychiatry, and my commute is about, 45 seconds. It's great. There's something wonderful about it.
I think there's a lot of silver linings here to this awful health pandemic. But I think that there's, people are realizing what's really important in life. And I think it was good for me personally, and for a lot of people, I think it was just good to slow down for a little while. Yeah. And realize that, maybe I don't need all this other stuff in my life, and it's okay to, just be home sometimes and enjoy your family. So that's been nice.
Yeah, it's true. So how has that impacted the work? Could you just tell our audience a little bit about what McNamara Reed does?
Yeah. Sure. So I'm an asset manager, which means I manage money for people. So people that have, for example, rollovers if they leave a job, or they inherit some money, or they're just, good savers and tucking money away. So I manage money for clients, and we charge a fee on an annual basis for that. We're what's called a fee-based advisor. And we're a big, small firm, in the world of asset management. We're a relatively small firm, compared to the Fidelities of the world, for example. But we're a small, independent, service-oriented firm. We've got great relationships with our clients. We manage about $500 million. So we're like a big, small firm in that regard. But really, as Tom read on my bio, my passion is really in the financial planning and the modeling and that problem solving that I can do for my clients, which is really, helping them answer those questions that are like, am I saving enough money? When can I retire? Can I afford to slow down and take on, a job or a career that's less stressful? Can I afford to send my kids to a 4-year private school times 3 or 4 kids? Can I take on these loans and afford to pay them back? So it's helping them answer all those financial questions in their life, and helping them, hopefully anyway, give them some peace of mind that what they're doing is going to help them achieve their goals, their long-term goals. So that's really where my passion lies, and in that modeling. That's where my engineering background really comes in, and that analysis that I can do and all that number crunching. That's really where my passion is. And I I'm biased, of course, but I do selfishly think that, well, not selfishly, but I do, in all honesty, think that is an incredibly valuable exercise that people can go through. And I'm sure we're going to get into the psychology of money today, but as you probably know, and we'll talk about more, that, money and finances can be such an incredible stress for people. But, my goal is to go through this process and get them on a path where I can, I guess I can't assure them, but I can help them feel comfortable that, what you're doing is going to be enough, and you're on a good track, and maybe things will be okay. And of course, that's not the case for everybody. And sometimes there's work to be done so that we can get there. But the end goal is always, let's put a financial plan together where you can achieve your goals. And maybe we need to modify them a little bit from your original goals, but working through that process and getting people on that right track is incredibly, I think in some regards, like, very liberating for people, and really can serve as a source of comfort and a stress relief for them. So in that regard, I think, that aspect of what I do, it can be quite powerful.
Very important to so many people, isn't it, Dr. Joe?
It sure is. I mean, in some ways, if you think about the IM and the 4 domains, money touches on every single one of them. How many times have you felt a little bit anxious that you were unable to pay something, or a little bit excited that you had maybe a little bit more money that you could do something special with?
Well, we see a lot of relationships breaking down based on money, right? And there's a lot of struggle that's happening right now, and it is based on money. But money is a necessity, right? I mean, we have to have it to do certain things, but how much do we need to have? And it's always an interesting conversation, especially with all the billionaires out there right now being challenged on, do they have too much money? But I wanted to talk to Alyssa because we do a lot of work closely with her and her firm, because they care so much about people, right? And they really get in there and plan for the future. And I want to know why some people resist or hesitate to get financial advice. Do they think that there's a barrier to entry, like there's a minimum threshold of how much money you need, or do they think it's expensive? Because they didn't teach me in college how to manage my money. Like, this requires professional advice. What is it, Alyssa, that holds people back from calling you and saying, I need your help?
Yeah, I think you have to remember that I don't talk to those people normally, right? The people that aren't calling me. So, right. So I'm not 100% sure, but people have made comments to me about, I was embarrassed to come in. I wasn't sure if I had enough money. People have this perception that, if you're working with a financial advisor, you have to be wealthy. Of course, there's different definitions of wealth, right? Of course, but people sometimes are embarrassed. They feel like they don't have enough. Maybe they feel like they're going to be judged that they didn't save enough. Maybe they haven't been maxing their 401ks or, stuff like that. They're worried that they're going to be judged. Of course, you and I know that this is ridiculous, and we're here to help, and whatever happened in the past is in the past, and we make a plan to move forward. But, I think other times people, maybe are embarrassed that they don't know enough about money. There could be someone that has $1 million or a couple $1 million and literally they don't know, they'll make a comment to me like, I don't know anything about investing. I don't know anything about money. I've never done a budget, but there are people that can still be successful in that aspect of their life. But maybe be embarrassed that they don't really know what they're doing. Having said that, that's why I have a profession. So, I'm always like, well, you should really never be embarrassed about something like that with me. I wouldn't have a career if there weren't people that were seeking out, advice in that regard. So that's what I can think of off the top of my head. And of course there are people that, maybe they just unfortunately haven't saved enough, and they don't have assets that they need help with. So that's very unfortunate. Those aren't the people that I work with, of course, but so I work with like a certain subset of the population, but I would say it probably comes back to they're embarrassed, or they don't know. I also will say sometimes people don't know when they need advice, right? So there are some times when I meet people that are 62 and they want to retire in a few years, for example, and I'm kind of wishing I met them sooner. I'm sorry, am I talking too much, Dr. Jeff?
No, I'm 62. I want to retire in a few years.
Yeah, so I think
I was actually going to ask you, Dr. Joe, how's yours? I mean, it's
terrible, but we'll get there. So go on. So
yeah, so I think that they're like, for example, there might be someone who has worked for the same employer for 30 years, right? And all their money is in their 401k, and maybe there's an investment person at the company that's helping them. So they don't really need help in that regard, and they have a savings vehicle that they're saving for. And so they kind of like don't really need advice. But if I meet someone like that again, when they're like 62 and hoping to retire soon, there are some times when I'm just like, oh, I wish I had even just talked to you for an hour 10 years ago, 15 years ago, just to give you a little snippet of, maybe do this and do that. So I think that there are people that just maybe don't know that it's perfectly fine, and in fact ideal from both sides of the table to just have a consultation, and whether or not you're really ready or have money to be managed at that time, whether or not you're there, let's maybe just have a conversation and see where you are. Does that make sense? I think sometimes people just don't know when it's the right time. I would say the biggest trigger for people is a change of job where there's a chunk of money that they don't know what to do with. And the other large trigger is an inheritance. Again, coming into money and the excitement and maybe nerves. Like, I don't want to screw this up. I don't want to do the wrong thing. And I guess the third trigger would probably be, I would like to retire someday. How do I do it? So that's,
Or how do I put my kids through college? It seems like there's three phases to the wealth accumulation, if you will. It's how am I going to pay for my college? How am I going to retire? And then what type of legacy am I going to leave behind?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you don't know what you don't know, Dr. Joe. And that's why professionals are so, so very important, because just like you said, Alyssa, I mean, if I had spoke to you 10 years ago, I could see it in Dr. Joe's face, like, oh, I wish I had that conversation 10 years ago, because you don't know what you don't know. And then you look back and you say, oh, I wish I had. But there's always now, right? There's always the opportunity to fix things that you can fix now.
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes down to confidence. Like, I can think of times where I've had a 28-year-old, walk into my office and just, I can think of a few actually, and they're kind of like, I don't really have much money, but I'm working and I'm saving, and I just want to know if I'm doing things right. And you know what? That takes guts. And I always compliment them for that. I'm like, congratulations to you for walking in, here and knowing that that it's okay to ask these questions. And, of course I offer a no-cost consultation, and so I think that that's great. However, like we're just talking about, on the flip side, I think there are people that just, they don't have that confidence, or they're worried, or they're nervous, and they kind of wait maybe a little bit longer than they should have, at least in my opinion. And that's unfortunate. So I would wish that everyone that has, any sort of, desire to retire and assets that, income that they could use for savings, that, anyone, just have a conversation with someone, get some ideas. And, there have been lots of times where I sat down with someone and maybe we weren't ready for a relationship at that time for a variety of reasons, but it's kind of like, hey, here's a few things to do and think about, and I'll see you in 10 years. And it's kind of cool, because now I've been, my career's been long enough where that stuff is starting to come back, and I'm starting to see those people come back. And that's really great. That's very fun to see.
This is a great catchphrase, desire to retire.
I've never used that before either.
It's a great one. I'm telling you, that could be right there. McNamara Reed.
That's my new slogan.
Great.
You know what she did say though, Dr. Joe, that really kind of jumps out at me is, people hesitate to even get the professional advice for fear of being judged.
Mm-hmm.
For fear of being judged. Like I don't know what I'm doing and I'm an idiot and you're gonna chastise me. But what about that out in the rest of the world? I mean, money and judgment, right? How the IC domain that we always talk about, right? Isn't that so much a part of money, right? Big hat, no cattle, right? A lot of folks who, they think that they need to present a certain air about themselves, but yet living above their means, right?
I think that's very unfortunate in our society, that there are many people, certainly some people, many people that feel the pressure to, project an image of wealth, for example. And yeah, I think unfortunately some people that are projecting that image, maybe aren't doing the things that they really should be doing in terms of saving the right amounts to pull off the right retirement, or maybe they have, a huge mortgage that they questionably can afford, and things like that. I think that pressure is very, I'm sad for people that exists and that people feel that pressure. I've met people that, I never really see where people live and what their life looks like, where our meetings are in the office or via Zoom. But, there are people that I think are projecting that. You just never know what's behind the scenes, right? There are people that are projecting that image that aren't doing the right things in the background in terms of savings. Having said that, I've met, a lot of people with a lot of money that live very modest lifestyles, and they're not succumbing to that pressure, right? And I think that that's wonderful. And again, I think maybe that comes back to, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not the doctor, right? Maybe that comes back to confidence and how worried you are about how people perceive you. But yeah, I think about that a lot actually in terms of, because of what I do and what I help clients with and what I know about their financial lives. And I feel sad about that very often. So I'll never buy myself a new car. I just refuse to do it. I'm going to drive my car for 20 years because I don't know. I'm the type of person that I get a little bit embarrassed when I if I had a brand new, Audi SUV, for example, right now, which is a beautiful car, I would be embarrassed to drive it, I think. So I think it can go both ways. Many people, and I'm not here for a personal session on me, but
we've already started.
I can see Dr. Joe analyzing me right now, but I do think that can go both ways from a financial perspective. In terms of long-term financial success, probably the way about me probably is might lead to a brighter financial future anyway, but again, what I'm saying is the pressure can go both ways.
What is that, Dr. Joe? Is that humility? Is that the fact that she doesn't want to be flashy, right? She's taking the opposite side of the big hat, no cattle. What is that? The millionaire next door that talks about big hat, no cattle. But on the other side of that is, because I know exactly what emotion you're talking about, Alyssa. I feel the same thing sometimes. It's not shame, but is it you don't want people to look at you as somebody who's wealthy, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to be part of the community, then not outside of the community, right?
Maybe that's it. Yeah. I don't know what it, I mean, so I probably actually do know what it is, but
you want to share that?
Well, you know what again, I think I said offline that I'm one of the biggest, I'm the hardest critic of myself. I'm very hard on myself. I know this about me, but I don't know that I can change it. I think it comes down to I work very hard in my career and in my life as a parent. I work I'm like one of the hardest working people you'll ever meet, but I've had success in my career, and I think I feel like sometimes I don't deserve it. But if I really think about it, I work incredibly hard. So I should know that I do deserve success, but I don't know if I'm not embarrassed. I'm just,
I must say, some of the most remarkable psychiatrists I ever met when I was in training at MGH McLean were also some of the most humble people I've ever met. That they were confident about who they were and what they did, and they didn't need to show it off to anyone.
yeah.
They just went about their business, doing what they were doing. And I have the same sort of mantra. I mean, there's an imposter syndrome that happens, I think, to many, many people who are like really, really good at what they do. And they go, wow, but anyone could do this. I mean, couldn't anyone just do this? And yet when you think about it, no, because you're working really hard. One of my other phrases, I've worked hard to be this lucky, because it's not luck. It's really hard work. Yeah. I wonder though, for you, Alyssa and Mark, whether, is there something about the image that you want to project in your field, working with finances, working with money, working with real estate? Is there a risk that if you're too flashy, you trigger something in your customer? Yeah. What do you think?
I think that in my profession, and Mark's probably as well, you have to strike that balance. If I was driving a very expensive car, I wouldn't want someone to think, well, what is she charging for fees? I mean, she must be she's gouging her clients, right?
Right.
But if I was if I literally was driving a 25-year-old car that was like the bumper's falling off, then my clients are thinking, well, she couldn't be any good at her job because she can't afford.
Right, that's the balance. Right.
So that I think that there's balance to be struck there. And I live in the town that I work in, and many of my clients are local to the South Shore, so I see them around town, and absolutely, I think that that's part of it. Yeah. And also I have 3 kids that would like to go to college one day, likely. So and I know how expensive that is because I do those calculations for people all the time, and that's part of it too.
That's really interesting that people want to compare where they are, right? And I would imagine that's a very natural thought, right, Dr. Joe? Like, how do I measure up to the rest of my community? How am I doing? How do I compare?
Right. And then that, unfortunately, translates to how valuable am I compared to somebody else? And if I have more money, does that make me more valuable? And I don't know. I'm not sure that money is the yardstick of value, but it sure is. I mean, there's so many things in our world that if you don't have this money, you don't get to do these other things. That's a whole nother sort of social justice discussion, perhaps. But I am curious, if somebody does come to you, Alyssa, and they are 62 and they're trying to retire, what do you assess?
I assess, of course, what their assets are, but the most important thing is, what are your assets relative to your needs? So I know that it doesn't make sense for people to want to be benchmarked against other people, even other people in the same town or on the same street. Because really what matters most is how much do you have, of course, plus what will your fixed income be? But for many people now, that's just Social Security, pensions, or, they're going to be going by the wayside. They've already started. So it's really, well, what do you have? And how does that compare to basically your lifestyle and what are your needs? Someone that has $1 million and spends $3,000 a month is going to be quite well off at 62. Someone that has $1 million and spends $15,000 a month isn't. So it really comes back to, it comes down to their lifestyle, and actually that kind of comes back to the discussions we've been having about status and pressures and all those things. Some people live a lifestyle not because they I think part of some people's lifestyles are they're sort of pressured into it, or they I guess what I'm saying is not all their decisions are their own. I think that if people really sat down and evaluated where their money was being spent, they might make some changes and kind of, start really thinking about what they value. That's I'm using value sort of in a different word than you are in terms of what they value in their, well, maybe not in their life.
Right. I mean, there's the material world that we have to live in. I mean, no matter how spiritual somebody is, you still need material things to sustain yourself.
Yeah.
What about people who still have like large mortgages, and they don't know whether they want to like still live in a big house, whether they can just downsize? I mean, there's so many permutations. I mean, there must be as many permutations as there are people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And a real estate move, or, real estate is a huge factor in someone's financial plan because it's either their biggest asset or one of their biggest assets. Hopefully, anyway, when I'm meeting people at age 62, for example, that hopefully they have a lot of equity in their property, and either a small mortgage or no mortgage at that point. But yeah, real estate is a big variable. Having said that, there's not, I've been in this business about 20 years. There's not a lot of people that really significantly downsize anymore in terms of taking hundreds of thousands of dollars off the table. It certainly happens, but in our area of the world, unless someone's moving, like right now, seems to be a lot of people moving to the Carolinas. For a while, it was Florida. But unless you're moving to somewhere else in the country that is significantly less expensive from a real estate perspective, I just don't see as many people taking as much money off the table as maybe they think they are, or they will be, or that they really need to be. Because like how many, 1,800 square foot brand new ranches are there around here? There's not that many, number one, and they're $700,000, right? So are you really downsizing that much? If you're making a real estate move in retirement and selling off the colonial and moving to the ranch, you know what I mean? There's not that much of a difference anymore.
Yeah.
Of course it happens, but
are you finding that too, Mark, in terms of real estate, that when people are retired, they don't want to sell their large house?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that loud and clear right now because there is no inventory, and the folks that it makes a lot of sense to be opening up inventory of property would be these folks that are entering into and into retirement age, right? They would be moving out and into something smaller, a community of 55 and older, or outside of the state, which they're not doing right now. They're aging in place, as the new phrase is called. And some of them are in very large homes, and some are in the modest homes, but for young families, these would be great homes, but they're opting to stay, and they're opting to stay a lot of times, unfortunately, because they've probably paid off their mortgage and they don't want to think about having another mortgage when, again, another financial conversation. But I mean, interest rates are so low. It's like, why not have a mortgage? But yeah, you're not seeing a lot of downsizing, as the term would be, that would make sense and would help open up some of the inventory to loosen up some of the product for people to buy too.
And while we're off air, but we were talking about the effects from COVID on financial planning and things. So, listen,
okay.
What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I could go in like 15 different directions with this, but I think one thing that's really important that we can pull from this pandemic that I think it's really important for people to hear is that this is just a good reminder for people of why we have an emergency reserves, right? We had some really awful markets earlier in 2020. Of course, the year ended up being the markets were just rosy and wonderful, and returns were great for the year. But we talked about silver linings earlier. I think one silver lining is like, okay, that was like a little jolt that people needed, right? This is why we have cash in the bank, because things happen and people lose jobs, and it's awful. But I would say, like, there are, in 2020, the federal government did, in my opinion, a great job getting stimulus, out there. They have pumped up unemployment. They got money into the hands of small businesses so that they could keep their employees employed, which for me was like kind of like a roundabout way to keep people off unemployment. That was sort of unemployment in a different way. But having said that, I think all that was great. And I think they did a great job. They're kind of like trying to get money to people so that things don't get a lot worse. And I think that's been great. There were, in 2020, people could access money in their retirement plans before 59 and a half, and they did not have to pay the 10% federal tax penalty. And I forget the exact statistic, but it was a very small amount of people that actually took advantage of that. I want to say it's normally like 3% of the population accesses that, and maybe it was 5% last year. It was very small. So that's actually really good statistic, that there weren't a lot of people that had to tap into their retirement monies early, which is great. But it certainly has affected people, in that maybe some people can't save as much as they were because one spouse isn't employed, or people just want to build cash just in case their furlough turns into a permanent layoff, for example. So I think it could have been a lot worse, but I think that there's a lot of people that are doing just fine. Thank goodness for that.
Well, probably because they had a good financial planner to begin with.
Yes, and all my clients had emergency cash.
Right, exactly.
No, I'm sure or most of them anyway. They should anyway.
And they didn't panic and sell when it went down.
I think I had one client that did, and I tried my best to talk him out of it. But sometimes people just can't sleep, and you got to do what you got to do. But yes, I serve as almost like a coach in that environment. So from February to March, and even into April of 2020, really just my role 100% was just calming people down, giving them perspective, letting them know that, I know you don't want to hear this, but the best thing you can do right now is nothing. And nobody really wants to hear that. Maybe there's a couple little small things that they can do to feel better. But yeah, that's my primary goal and objective in my role in times like that. And I will say those aren't incredibly fun days to go to the office when the market's down about 35% and we're in a global health pandemic. But of course, I'm there when my clients need me. And I try to do a lot of sort of training of my clients at the beginning of our relationship, so they have that perspective about what can happen in the markets and what is normal. What does history tell us about what is sort of normal based on your investment strategy? And when we have the next bear market, which is the bad one, what to do. And in all honesty, it's nothing. So I try to like head that off at the pass, when I meet new people and have those discussions ongoing with my clients, so that because I don't want them to panic when we have bad markets. I want them to close their eyes and cross their fingers and have faith in me and in the markets in the world and in capitalism. So, right. So I try to do that in advance, right? So that people don't have to panic, and I try to put them in an appropriate investment strategy so that it shouldn't cause them panic, right? If you're 62, for example, and about to retire, you shouldn't have had an all stock portfolio that was down 35 or 40%, right? You just shouldn't have that. So that's what an investment professional, a good one should do, is have you in something that's appropriate for your circumstances. And it's hard for me to know exactly how someone's going to react when their money does a certain thing, but I want to have them in something that hopefully doesn't cause them panic.
Yeah, because an anxiety brain is a flight brain where you just want to get away from everything. And if you're that impulsive and reflexive, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. That's one of the things we talk about with the IM, is it's much more important to be reflective than reflexive. So we can just reflect on what we need to do. Here's the 4 domains. We know that there's been a huge impact in the social domain with COVID. everything has been impacted. How does that affect your home domain, your IC domain, biological domain? And with the money part, I mean, there is the reality that some people, and maybe all of us, money is security. Mm-hmm. Somehow money has translated into, I'm a little safer if I've got a bit more money. Has that been your experience, Alyssa?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I ever really thought about it like that, but yeah, certainly. And again, for me, it doesn't really come down to the dollar amount, but it's knowing that what I'm doing is going to get me where I want to be. But yeah, but certainly, when people accumulate wealth or they inherit, some money at a time in their life when it just really is helpful because they had debt or their kids are in college or whatever. That is certainly a source of comfort for people. Of course, it can bring on more stresses. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes people inherit money and they're just like, I don't know what to do. I'm stressed out. I don't want to make a mistake. But those are all good problems to have.
Should we be teaching our young kids about money?
Oh, 100%, Dr. Joe. You're going to have to come to my next, you're going to have to come to the next Smart with Money fair that we do at the high school.
Okay.
So for 7 years running, I don't know what's going to happen in 2021, but for 7 years, McNamara Financial has organized with one of my friends and the teachers at the high school, the Smart Money Fair, which is like you might have heard of Credit for Life Fair. Just like, it's like a one day, tons of information about, the importance of living within your means and not using credit cards unless you can pay them off, and tucking money in retirement when you have a 401k available to you at age 23. Mm-hmm. And that stuff is incredibly important. And I've had some discussions with the principal at the high school about it, and they're doing what they can to try to work that stuff into the day-to-day curriculum there. But that stuff that's real life stuff that is so important, and it pains me that it's not really a part of the curriculum yet. I think that they're making some steps in that regard, but yeah, I believe in that 100%. The earlier you can build good financial habits, the much better off you'll be long term. Start doing stuff like right at Tom's age. Like you should be putting 10 to 12% in your 401k, Tom, and have 10 grand in the bank. And make your contributions Roth. That's very generic, of course.
So we have a few minutes left. Towards this time of the show, we talk about the 2 rules of the IM. Remember, we're all doing the best we can, influenced by the home domain, the social domain, the biological, and the IC domain. And even though tonight it may seem like a pun, small changes have big effects. So I'm just wondering, given your experience, what small change can you recommend to our listeners that they can make so that they have a bit more financial security?
Yeah, I would say the best thing that people can do for themselves is to pay attention to where their money goes. And what I mean by that is I'm going to use the word budget. I hate the word, but just do an expense itemization. Know where your money goes, because when you're going to start questioning, why am I spending money in this, that, and the other place? And it is just naturally going to lead to better habits and a better ability to save money. And you don't have to stick to the exact numbers of the budget. It doesn't have to be a stressful exercise. But it's just so eye-opening for people, and just the best thing they can do.
That's a great
for their
small
financial
change.
life. Yeah.
And then, so that's small change. And the second thing is, you control no one, you influence everyone. You get to choose the kind of influence you want to be. In 30 seconds, Alyssa, what kind of influence do you want to be?
Oh, I feel like I'm on the spot right now.
Why?
Why?
Yeah, what kind of influence do you want to be?
I want to help people have a financially secure future. I know that sounds corny, but that's what I want to do. I want to educate people that money doesn't have to be stressful, that it can be a source of comfort, as you said, and it can be liberating when you take control of it yourself.
Listen, thanks so much for being with us tonight. Thank you.